The boys are back in town. We are here for the end of season roundtable. They've been here since before the season, through the season, and we're here to wrap it up for all of you. We are going to discuss everything from Tua's extension all the way to Fangio's departure. Plus, I'll ask them who their MVPs throughout the season were, as well as their biggest surprise, their biggest disappointment. We got a lot to talk about. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you are new. And as usual, let's get into it.
Touchdown! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score! Field on the near side, that open, touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. He's got it for a touchdown. He's in.
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go! What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason. We're back here for another one. As like I said, the boys are back in town, and it is time for the end of the season roundtable. DouglieDoWrong, Neal, Driscoll, Kevin Dern from Dolphins Talk, Richmond, Webb, the Triple OG, Mr. BallGame, and of course, my Ann. Gentlemen, listen, let's hop right into it. I mean, why waste a beat? I mean, Tua and Fangio could fill the hour to hour and a half I have slotted for this show. No, gentlemen, this will not be a marathon. This is not CBS and the public charity, so we won't be pulling one of those 2 or 3 hour streams. So we got a lot to talk about. So let's hop into it. I mean, let's start off with the hottest topic. Obviously, I want to get you guys candidates and everything as we go, but let's just start. Let's start off with what's happened today and what happened yesterday, because I think they're tied into one another. So what I'm talking about is this. Yesterday, an article came out from Albert Breer. I believe it was yesterday. It was yesterday, right? It was yesterday.
Yeah.
And Albert Breer had this to say regarding Vic Fangio. I'll read it real quick. And it says, how Fangio fits in Philadelphia bears watching. The Eagles announced their hiring of Fangio on Saturday night, and thus ended what was really a 2-year courtship of the former Broncos coach from Philadelphia. Tampering. Through 2022, the team did everything but have Fangio measure out an office to line him up as their contingency plan in the event Jonathan Gannon bolted for a head coaching job. He did, and why? Tampering. All of that came apart simply due to timing, they say. Gannon did land a job with Arizona, but that didn't crystallize until just before last year's Super Bowl, which was well after the Fangio notice they don't mention the tampering. Good on them. But Fangio, he had agreed to take the Dolphins job, which we've now learned was 2 years, and there's $4.65 million per year. Fangio went to Miami, and the Eagles turned to Desai instead. Since then, they've both been fired. The former, okay, and this is where it gets interesting. This is where I think what we saw today is a rebuttal to this. The former was stripped of play calling duty, then dismissed. That's Desai, right? Fangio's one-voice approach to running the defense wore on other coaches. See, we're not talking about just players now. An example being that he didn't allow position coaches to present their work to the defense, instead gathering information from them and doing it himself. That sort of approach is decidedly old school and seeped through to the players who, by the end of the season, started to tune Fangio out. So while Fangio may have wanted to go to Philadelphia all along, his departure from Miami wasn't exactly voluntary. And my sense is whoever's next, right, whether it be Brandon Staley, whoever, will have to employ a more collaborative style, plus much better with stars such as Jalen Ramsey. And why am I pointing like this? because EM Dolphin fan, I know you're watching, and I told you that I think where he went wrong was where with Jalen Ramsey. I think
Not letting Ramsey travel.
Well, yeah, I think when X went to it, because I reported early on, right? I reported early on in October that there was tension between X and Fangio, but he didn't. No one really batted an eyelash. The problem with Ramsey is Ramsey came over. He had already won a championship in this defense. They viewed him as not only a superstar player who they're paying a lot, but they viewed him as a player authority on this defense. What's good for this defense? That's why we've heard issues such as they thought Cam Smith was ready, et cetera, et cetera. So, but I digress. Let's keep it going because there's more to add to this. So then today this happens. And I'm going to play this for y'all. This is Ron Jaworski. Jaws, everyone remembers him from ESPN, admits he's a friend of Fangio. He's now a Philadelphia mouthpiece. I got to preface all that because I know people out here trying to take this as gospel. This is what he said.
I've known Vic Fangio back the mid-'80s when he was with the USFL Philadelphia Stars as a volunteer, unpaid assistant, cutting his teeth in professional football.
Wild.
I've kept in touch with Vic all through the years. You won't find a better man, a football lifer, a guy dedicated to his profession, a great designer, not an ego that impacts anyone else. And when I knew it was going to be Vic, it was going to be hard. I started doing my research again. I know his football style and what he wants to do, but back in 2019, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, and Matt LaFleur were pretty damn good NFL coaches. All said the toughest coach to prepare for defensively is Vic Fangio. Now that's saying a lot right there. When those three guys at the height of the game, recognize Vic Fangio as a great designer.
Yeah.
So, and I kind of felt as things were falling apart after the season, there needed to be an adult in the room, a guy that really understood the ups and downs of the NFL. And I thought that's why Vic Fangio really fit that mold perfectly.
Joe says,
head coach, he's been fired, he's been on different teams. He's been through it all. So you're going to get a guy with great experience.
Does the Dolphins players speaking out against him, and I can't stand Drew Rosenhaus. I'll still hold him responsible for the TO thing 20 years ago. But Drew Rosenhaus going public is just sort of unusual for an agent to do so about a coordinator that got whacked, or they moved on from, if you will. Does that give you some pause, or is that just the modern athlete, and does he need to do a better job from what you surmise of dealing with him?
It impacts you 0%. Coach is coach, and connections as well around this league. And I hear another side of that story that there were some players on that defense that didn't want to work, didn't want to put the time in, didn't want to put the effort in, didn't want to make the commitment to be successful. Guys like to party at night, and South Beach is a really great place to party. Get those guys to push those guys to become harder workers and better athletes and more committed to their team. And he couldn't get through to those guys. So those are the guys that Vic was pushing, and they're the guys that are whining right now.
Okay, now, since that has aired, okay, friends of me and Dougley, the All Dolphins podcast, they went live and they talked about this. Okay, Omar named names. Omar named one of the partiers is Eli Apple. They didn't name Cam Smith. Mm-hmm. When he talked about the work ethic, he said the players that he has not heard any of the big names on defense say anything bad about Fangio. And he said the work ethic thing, he's like, I've been there firsthand. All these guys the work ethic is not an issue right now. So Omar's kind of, oh, by the way, Omar also said now that Fangio's gone, he can say it. He's been told by players Fangio hated Cam Smith. Like he used the word hate. He didn't just say he didn't like him. He said hated Cam Smith. They don't know why. So, because we've now heard players were going to him and saying, what? Cam Smith should be playing and not Eli Apple, right? Another one they went to him about was Ogba should be playing more. Look at the production we're getting relative to the snaps they're giving him. And not only players, but coaches as well. Fangio just didn't want to hear it. So let's start with Doug, and we'll go clockwise to all you guys. Doug, your thoughts on the Fangio departure as it's now becoming clearly a he said, she said. There's going to be layers of truth and layers of bending the truth to both sides of the story here. What's your take on what you've heard over the past 24 hours with those two things and the departure in general?
The departure was real shady, like real shady. You insinuated it, but it's not an insinuation. It tampering. Like he's gonna be mutually separating from the Dolphins an Eagle. Like, come on, and especially because during training camp they asked him, "Would you have been an Eagle?" And he's like, "Oh, I wouldn't say I wouldn't have, but things happened the way they did." And like, come on, we're not dumb here. When it comes to the rumors and stuff, it is what it is. You know, there's going to be rumors. We have rumors with Flores and all that stuff. The thing that pops out to me is it seems like, and I don't want to crap on Fangio because to me Fangio did well. Did good things, especially down the stretch where he had nobody. Mm-hmm. But it seems like what they're doing now is trying to fight back and push back on it, because it's not just the players that didn't like Fangio. It was the coaches. Like, the coaches are coming out as well. And that's kind of the same thing that happened with Flores, where a lot of the coaches started coming out and being like, he was a dictator. He did what he wanted to do. So it is what it is. Like I said, I liked him. When we got Fangio, we were all hyped. We were like, we got him. We all kind of had that feeling, especially you were talking about it back in October, that it's a 1-year rental. But he did good things, and now he's gone, and hopefully we get someone better, someone younger that'll be here more than just a year.
And we'll talk about candidates after this. Neal, your thoughts, because I know we talked about it on the show. You've heard things from people in the Baltimore organization about, a question about a love for the game to an extent.
Yeah, I'm not going to crap on Fangio too much. I think it was very clear from his arrival to his departure that he was never engraved into the Miami Dolphins culture the way we wanted him. And I definitely think there's something with the ability to relate to the modern athlete. But I do think there are parts of this Dolphins franchise from a top-down players that don't have the commitment that it takes to take the next step as an organization. So, and I've heard there's some validity from what Vic Fangio said, and I don't have any players to put it on, but, I think it kind of showed at the end of the season where the Dolphins weren't as prepared as you'd probably like. But, if the guy doesn't want to be here, you're not going to get his best, and it's best to move on. I'm not as concerned with losing Vic Fangio. One thing I am concerned about is that we have a $100 million player that played the best season of his career in Bradley Chubb, and he didn't look so good before Vic Fangio got here. I'm a little nervous to what Fangio's departure might mean for Bradley Chubb, which makes me nervous as a Dolphins fan because we already know he's out the first quarter plus of the season. So we'll see. But, I'm ready to move on, turn the page, get someone else in here. The he say, she said. I want the Dolphins to focus on building a bully this offseason, not about fighting with their old defensive coordinator. I am excited that this could potentially unlock Cam Smith, a motivated Cam Smith headed into training camp.
Kevin, what are your thoughts on this? You're muted, brother.
Still muted.
Does he know that? You're muted, bro. You're muted.
You're muted, Kev.
To be honest, I haven't heard Kevin on the whole time.
I know either. Maybe that's why. He's muted the whole time on his end. I don't know. All right, we'll come back. We'll come back while he figures it out. Richmond, your thoughts on it as a former player?
Yeah, as a former player, the thing I don't like is, this stuff starts coming out, and typically it's when it's going to come out is when somebody leaves. I do think he did some good things for the Dolphins, but I also know you can lose the locker room or the players that play for you. And if they start tuning you out, it's a downhill spiral. And then if it's true what they said about as far as the assistant coaches that worked up under him and kind of taking away, everything, stripping them of everything, that's not good for the workplace, this and that. So I think the thing, I kind of like what Neal said is, we need to become that bully. if you watch playoff football, it's it's good to run the football, but it's been physicality. Doesn't matter what team you looked at, it's been physicality, especially the division round and the championship round. That's the step that I think we've got to take. It's good to throw the ball, get the big passes and stuff like that. But, we were talking before the show when I seen Detroit go for a third, I think it was 3rd and 12, and they ran the football and picked up the first down. I said, that's playoff football. So I think that's definitely, we got to add some things, but, like you said, if you don't want to be here, it's best, you move on. I'm happy for him. I appreciate what he did, but let's look at finding the next guy that's going to help us get to where we want to go.
Kevin, are you working now? Is it working? Nope. No. It's got the Josh Rosen microphone.
Oh, man.
Ball game. Your thoughts from as a defensive coach.
So I was I'm not going to even front, man. Him having spent the time he spent in the organization prior to accepting the DC job, one thing I know about coaches is that if you've ever been in a position where you've been at the top of the pecking order, running your own show, you do everything in your power to get back to that space. No guy that I've ever been around that's ever been successful or had the top spot wants to be somebody else's second-hand man for a long period of time. And, where Vic is in terms of age and wisdom and experience in this league, I'm not surprised that he went back to Philly. I mean, I think he was just waiting on those guys to really just basically cut their own throats and bleed themselves out. And then he was the obvious choice for them to go back and pluck him. So for me, I was happy that he came in and stabilized some things and gave these guys a defense, or showed them the premise of a defense that actually allows them to play the best version of play football at the highest level, for them to be comfortable in it. You know what I'm saying? To be the best versions of themselves. I'm just hoping that whoever the offensive side to go get at this point kind of comes in with the same type of mindset. The problem is that Vic was so old and so set in his ways that the new age coaches, the guys that are around him, that was always going to be, unfortunately, a bad mix, because he's always, if you think about, his tenure elsewhere as a head coach, he had guys that he had to rely on. Well, when you're a DC, really and truthfully, basically, you essentially the flag general. You're not necessarily, or the flag admiral. You're the real admiral. You're not the top spot admiral or the fleet admiral or something like that. But you fall in under the other guy, and you got to take the orders from the guy up top. And he just, I never felt like he was going to be built for that anyway. But I thank him for what he did. I don't believe in crapping on people, man. People have to make decisions that are best for them. They got to live with, and they got to go do things for themselves and improve their career. So I appreciate what he did for us in terms of giving this Dolphins defense a new identity. We just got to make sure whoever we bring in is willing to continue that process of having these guys, stick to their crafts and be the best version of themselves. Because football is football. Defense don't change. They have a responsibility to get the ball back as often to the offense as possible, takeaways, and punch people in the mouth. And you have to have a mentality to do that. And maybe he just, I don't know. It takes a while to get used to guys that you don't know, right? And him coming in new, trust is everything. And Vic's an old school guy, so trust ain't easily earned with him. Now the whole thing with Cam Smith, I can see that angle too. I didn't pick this kid. I read his draft. I read his draft report. I know that him and Greer and his son were friends, and maybe there's a lot of stuff that goes behind the scenes that maybe Vic just didn't sit well with Vic. I know he likes veterans too, but at this point now, you can't deny you spend a second round pick on this kid. He's got to play. So whatever vendetta he had against him, I would like to know what it was. But when you set in your ways, man, it's hard to get people to move you off your square. And unfortunately, that's probably the one thing that he brought in that didn't sit well. And we know now it didn't sit well, but Vic's gonna be Vic, and I knew that from the beginning. So,
Martin, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, man, I respect Ron Jaworski. He led the Philadelphia Eagles to a Super Bowl in 1980 through 3 picks against the Los Angeles Raiders, so it didn't mean too much. But my thing is when I see something like that, I said to myself, this is the same guy that said the delta between Alex Smith and Aaron Rodgers was significant, which is why Alex Smith was the correct pick at number 1 overall in the 2005 NFL draft. I don't necessarily take Ron Jaworski's word as gospel. That's just me, man. And to be fair, what I do respect is his passion, and he was very passionate in defending the move to acquire our former defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. But Vic Fangio is clearly in the wrong here. He's in the wrong. Cam Smith, and we spoke about this on camera behind stage. For Cam Smith not to have played a significant amount of snaps in his rookie year as a defensive back is asinine, considering that Brian Flores threw Noah Igbenogany to the wolves when Stephon Diggs first stepped foot in a Buffalo Bills uniform. I'm like, what are we doing? You know what I mean?
They kind of stunted Cater's growth in it because they were throwing him out on the boundary instead of
exactly.
And they were throwing him against like top guys to kill his confidence. Like
exactly. And Cam Smith is just young enough and just naive enough to, when he gets beat, he's like, oh well, you know what I mean? Like he's just that young enough to let it slide. Whereas you want Cater to stick to that slot and figure out how to be a first team, second team All Pro, like a Trent McDuffie, like what's the guy with Buffalo, Teron Johnson. Like Cater Kohu, in my humble opinion, Dolphins fans aside, is that caliber of a nickel back. But regardless, Vic Fangio did what he felt like he needed to do, and I think the split was mutual, like legitimate mutual split. And I'm with everyone else, man. I hope we get a guy that is not only younger, but can mesh well with Mike McDaniel's vision, because one of my favorite movies to watch is Drumline, with Nick Cannon, right? And the saying in Drumline is one band, one sound. And what that means is, if we're not on the same page, we have to figure out how to get on that same page before we step on stage when the lights come on. You know what I mean? So that's the thing with it, man. You want to get guys in here that see the same thing and talk the same talk. And if Vic Fangio was a wrench into that, hey man, by all means, man, salute to him for what he did in 2023. But we made the right decision, and let's bring a guy in that will mesh well with exactly what the vision will be moving forward, because it just wasn't it with Vic Fangio, and I respect him, but I mean, to each his own, man. Let's move forward, man.
Kevin, you there?
Yeah, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Crystal clear.
Perfect.
So I think as far as like the last 24 hours, I couldn't care less about what was said. I go back to like when he was first hired, he didn't get to pick the entirety of his own defensive staff. Anthony Campanelli got held over. Austin Clark got held over. I believe Sam Madison was held over.
True.
So, are we that surprised that some of these things come out after he's gone? Like, yeah. I'm not. And reason this goes back to what I talked to you about when I was on, I think it was just you and me back in the spring. You have a young head coach in McDaniel who maybe doesn't always have the best grasp on administrative duties, because Fangio was effectively a head coach of the defense. So, and I think that goes back, like, even look at the organization when they hired McDaniel, like they forced Josh Boyer on him because they wanted continuity.
And Crossman.
Yeah. So some of these things are just like the organizational culture, which, let's be honest, hasn't won a damn thing since like Richmond was playing, some of that is what it is. But I think with Fangio, my prevailing word is just disappointing because I think he had some strange proclivities with personnel, had some bad game plans, but ultimately, like, statistically, if you account for like points given up by the offense and special teams, would have been a top 10 scoring defense in addition to being top 10 overall. So whoever comes in after him's got some work to do. And I think other people probably touched on this. I know Neal did, and I think Dougley did. You're going to have some time before you get Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb back at 100%. Through other personnel attrition, you're probably going to see some regression. So I think the biggest challenge is how do you stave that regression off for the new DC? And, I think maybe McDaniel learned a lesson along the way too with how this played out.
Like, it feels like even Slowick was a McDaniel call, not even when you do the history and you go through who him and his brother are connected to, they come from basically the McVay, and they come from the Shanahan tree, right? So it's like, even feels like the outside linebacker coach was like a call from above him. I get what you're saying. So let me talk about this. All right. So, we've had all these candidates that have been interviewed, right? We've had Ryan Slowick, Anthony Campanelli, guys who are going to be interviewed. Ryan Slowick, Anthony Campanelli, Brandon Staley, Bobby Babich got promoted today by Buffalo, Leslie Frazier. I know Ejiro Evero got blocked, which that sucks because, right? Anthony Weaver is now going to interview he's from what's his face?
Baltimore.
Baltimore.
Yeah, Ravens.
And then also they're going to interview the Texans linebacker coach Chris Kiffin on Friday. And then it's kind of funny when you heard them, right? Like when you've heard, talking about Fangio and how Jaws brought up how, all these guys were praising Fangio, blah, 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 right? Like McVay, LaFleur. Well, a point that I brought up, why I think Staley is the preferred option here, not only because I think it's seamless. Who the hell is he interviewed with? Just interviewed with LaFleur on Saturday, interviewed with us today, and now he's got to go interview with McVay. He's the doll. He's the next doll of that defense, right? Because I think where he fits in and where Leslie Frazier fit in here. Now, I know Leslie likes that Tampa 2 a little bit more, but where they fit in here is I think it's pretty much known league-wide. They're better coordinators than they are head coaches. And there's guys, I tell this, I use this analogy. I use this analogy. There's some guys who are meant to see overseers, CEOs. There's other guys who are just meant to be department managers. And that's a fact. And it happens in every industry. And I think this is no different. Perfect example. Steve Spagnuolo, Steve Spags from KC. Terrible head coach. Terrible. But as a
St. Louis Rams. Yeah.
But as a coordinator right now, arguably the best defensive coordinator and best defensive mind in football right now. The things when you watch the All-22 of the things they were doing to disguise their looks against us, the rotations and stuff, it was incredible. Look at the interception. Look at how they baited Tua into that throw. They gave him a one-on-one matchup, but because Smythe's, concept was kind of running parallel with Tyreek, right? As soon as Tua starts to throw, if you key in on it, what happened? They bailed off the route off the slot and double. Like, they were doing stuff we hadn't seen done to us yet, like baiting him in. But the disguising was even, we were basically led to believe that Vic Fangio was a master of disguise. And then I watched Spags face us twice, and I was like, no, there's the master of disguise this year. But anyways, who are your guys' favorite candidates? We've gone over all of them. Who guys make the sense for me? For me, it's been Evero, Staley, Frazier, and an off-the-board guy I like that circle likes is Jim Leonard. Who have you guys been liking? We'll start with we'll go the same order. Why not? Dougley, who are your top candidates right now?
I'm starting to soften up on Staley because I understand, he didn't do well as a head coach with the Chargers, but that defense in 2020 with the Rams, he had, Ramsey and Aaron Donald, but that was the best. It's not even like questionable. The best defense in the NFL. Leslie Frazier would be nice. I feel like if they do bring in Leslie Frazier, it's kind of one of those situations where now it's like, all right, instead of trying to build our team to stop Tom Brady and the Patriots. Now we are building our team to stop Josh Allen and the Bills. You bring Leslie Frazier in, he knows Josh Allen in and out. So you bring him in. It seems like that type of mentality is we need to shut him down and beat them and then focus on, the rest of the division. But my favorite right now when he popped up is Anthony Weaver. I really like Anthony Weaver. I think he, it's that Baltimore mentality. He's the D-line coach, but he's also the assistant head coach. There is that connection with Mike McDaniel. They were both on the Browns in 2014, so there is that connection there. He did interview with Washington for their head coaching position, and possibly he's going to interview with Seattle as well, but he already was a defensive coordinator, so he already knows what he was doing with the Texans in 2020. But I like Anthony Weaver. I think we bring him in. That's that bulldog that we need at defensive coordinator, and I think he'll be with us for a few years, so I like him.
Neal, who are you liking?
Dougley stole my thunder. My number one candidate right now is Anthony Weaver. And I think that if we wait too long and Mike McDaniel gets one of these jobs, he's going to be the next man up in Baltimore. He's the assistant head coach. He's respected by everyone in the building. His players love him. He's been in the trenches, went to Notre Dame, played his ball there. We knew he played it in Baltimore and Houston. He's the guy. And I've been on, and I know we talked about this reason, and I said I didn't want a first-time head coach because I think that it would be hard for us to take us as serious contenders with that. I think Anthony Weaver is the exception to that rule. I think he's ready right now. And look, Baltimore's a top 3 organization, and when you can get players or coaches that defect off of their organization, sign me up. Anthony Weaver is my choice number 1 right now for that position.
Can I read an excerpt to you guys before I go to Kevin here? This is from a Houston Texans blog, and it says, this should also be a lesson for everyone who touted Anthony Weaver as a defensive fixer. No one has any idea if a new coordinator or coach will be good in a role they haven't had before. That goes for anyone. Anthony Weaver said all the right things, had the pedigree of a good defensive coordinator, but once the season started, he actively hurt the defense by having Watt play nose tackle, Jacob Martin rush the interior and drop back, Lonnie Johnson Jr. stand in the deep middle, Eric Murray play slot corner, playing crappy veterans instead of the kids, and praying that a cover 3 scheme will work that never did. The talent was the biggest problem, even if the strategy made it worse. Hopefully Weaver gets another shot one day to make up for the all Madden difficulty he had to play on. So,
yeah, but we could say the same thing about Vic Fangio. The reason we didn't host the playoff game.
But Vic Fangio is experienced. We're getting into the problem is when we get into the Campanellis, the Slowicks, the Weavers, we're getting into guys, and we're going to talk about this on the next topic coming up. We're getting into guys who have no proven track record. Can McDaniel afford for a guy who's going to have a learning curve in the first year, given the way his offense has performed later in the year, the last 2 years? That could cost him his job.
Yeah, but I would just say one thing, and Fangio does have experience, but I'll say all coaches have bad moments. Like I think anyone on this panel could have coached the last 3 minutes of that Titans game and won, right? Like I'm dead serious. That's not a joke. I think that I could have coached that team to a victory.
That goes both ways, though. On offense, we couldn't move the football too to kill the clock.
No, I agree, but I'm just saying that, like a bad experience in Houston when that organization was in the capacity to was at that time.
I'm just hey,
I think advocate. People grow, and everyone should, everyone could have an opinion. I think Brandon Staley is a good option as well, just because I like Leslie Frazier. The one fear I have is that you want a guy that's going to fit the culture of this team, and I'm not sure if Leslie Frazier is that guy.
Yeah, I mean, I like Wink, and I would love Wink, but they're not going to go to Wink because of the scheme. McDaniel wants that aggressive stuff out of here, right? So, Kevin, what are your thoughts on this? Because I think he just brought up Leslie Frazier. Now, I like Leslie Frazier, but Leslie Frazier feels like what you just touched on when we were talking about Fangio, right? Leslie Frazier was interviewed for the head coaching job. Leslie Frazier feels like more of a Greer selection than it does a McDaniel. Hey, it might be both, but I know Greer's wanted him here for a while. What are your thoughts? Who are your favorite candidates? And could Leslie Frazier go down that same path? Could that pick be the same path you were just talking about with Fangio's staff?
Well, I guess by default, I have to say my favorite's Brandon Staley, since we both went to the University of Dayton. But with Leslie Frazier, I know I know that goes even higher than Greer. That's a Stephen Ross suggestion, just because they have interviewed him as head coach candidate before during the McDaniel cycle. I think it depends. Like, if you bring him in, are you going to let him hire his own staff, or are you going to force more assistants on him? Like, I think that plays a part in it. I think of the group, of the candidates they had, the two that would have intrigued me the most are the guys that aren't going to be here, in Evero and Babich. I thought Babich did a really nice job getting Buffalo's linebackers to play as well as they did this year, because Milano got hurt, Edmonds was gone. You had Tyrell Dodson, who's like a career special teamer out there starting, and that defense got really good at the end of the year. Honestly, like none of the candidates like move the needle for me positively, but none of them are going to drop it, at the same time. I like the fact that McDaniel kind of wants to keep the same philosophy and have like a malleable coverage scheme with it. I completely understand why he's not going to be a guy for Wink, and I think Wink has kind of lost his way the last couple of years and gotten a little reckless with things. That's neither here nor there. I guess if I had to vote other guys, I'd probably choose Leslie Frazier just because of his experience, but for no reason more than that.
Richmond, who do you like out of these candidates?
Yeah, I'm pretty consistent with everybody else. Don't know all of them like you guys do, but definitely Brandon Staley and Leslie Frazier, and then just listening to Dougley and Neal about Weaver from Baltimore. And I listened to your comments as well as when he was at Houston. Sometimes it doesn't work out the first time you actually take like a coordinator position or whatever. Sometimes you got to make the mistakes, and then the next time you get the opportunity, you do better at it. But like back to your point as well, also is I don't think McDaniel can afford to have somebody make a bunch of mistakes, because that could cost him his job as well. So that I've known Leslie Frazier, he's been around, and Staley. So all these are good names. I think the thing is during the interview process is really having that heart-to-heart communication with them, with Chris Greer or Coach McDaniel, and figuring out if this guy understands the philosophy of what you're trying to do and buy into, is he okay if he's not able to select his whole staff, or he's got to have some holdovers, this and that. I think that need to be put on the table right up front. So it can't be said, after the fact that, well, I want to bring my other people in. But if you want to bring them in and you can't, either you good with it or just say, no, I'll stay where I'm at. So I think it's just having that during the interview process, really kind of understanding where everybody's at, where everybody wants to achieve. And if you're on board with that, try to select the best candidate from there.
Who do you like, BallGame?
So for me, man, at this point where we are in this whole reconstruction process, I think the most important thing is about minimizing the wholesale changes. These guys did exceptionally well running Vic's scheme, right? And it's definitely a scheme that has a lot of notoriety throughout the league. And for me, unless there's a conversation where Staley says to them that this is only a short-term situation for him, and he has a desire to go back to be at the helm somewhere, which I don't see happening for him anytime soon. I think he's in his best role as a coordinator. Staley's my guy, because that doesn't change much for the defense in terms of them having to go back and relearn anything at this point. And they proved, without a shadow of a doubt, that even with the number of injuries they had on that side, that collectively they could get the job done with anyone on the field. It's just a matter of sticking to the scheme, right? And I think he's proven in the NFL that he has the ability to be able to command the troops in that form and fashion as a DC. So for me, he's the first guy. Leslie Frazier would be nice, but again, I think that leads to how long would he be here? You know what I mean? Because the ultimate desire still is to be back in a head coaching spot somewhere, and nobody can argue that he's not after the Vikings stint and going to the Bills, and then he took some time off. You know, I need to know whether or not he really has a desire to go back to that level again, or if he just going to be comfortable being a DC and grooming Mike. And then for me, the last guy will be Campanelli, man, just because of the fact that I know that dude can motivate these cats to run through walls. So a lot of times, you know what I'm saying, a younger coach is like Campanelli probably doesn't, he's not an ego guy, I don't believe. So he could pull in the resources from the guys around, you know, and tap into his resources around him and still make it make sense and be able to probably fill the group that even if they're not technically sound, they'll knock your dick in the dirt. And that's what we need. There's always this conversation about the Dolphins, bro, that resolves around whether or not they're tough enough, right? And you determine toughness by your ability to truly get physical when you have to get physical. When people show up with physicality on their mind, you got to be willing to match that and overpower them with that. And we need somebody that's going to be willing to make that a known theme amongst this group. And I think they had that. Fangio did a really good job of getting these guys to buy in and believe, you know what I mean? But Staley would be my guy, man. I just don't want to see I don't want to see no major changes. I think these guys did exceptional in that scheme. He knows the scheme, right? He's one of the guys that, you know, Vic has brought up in it, and they learned it, and he knows it, and he's proven he could be highly successful leading it. So he'd be my guy.
Martin, where are you at with this?
I'm with BallGame's last candidate. You know, scheme is scheme, but give me a guy that knows the players, man. Campanelli, I just love what BallGame mentioned about the passion. When you have a guy that can you know, flip the switch for these guys, you know, like BallGame said, have guys run through walls for you. That's completely different, you know, in my opinion, than just being at the right place at the right time. When you have players that want to play football again, meaning that he can bring the love back into the game. That's what the passion does. I believe that Campanelli might be the best candidate for what we're trying to accomplish because he's a 10-year guy. He's been here for the longest, as far as the candidates that we've brought up. Obviously, he doesn't have the experience when it comes to game and you know, offense versus offense as far as week to week. There's still a lot for him to really catch up to, but he's been in the NFL for so long. I can only assume that if he gets his opportunity, he'll figure it out. I want a Campanelli type of coordinator that can still mesh well with what Mike McDaniel wants to accomplish as far as vision. So I think Campanelli's my guy. That's just me.
Okay. All right. Next going on here, I got something. Let's talk about Tua's extension, and I'm going to ask a weird question, but let me explain it to you guys. I'm not going to give an answer. I'll let you guys answer. Does Vic Fangio's departure hold off the Miami Dolphins from extending Tua Tagovailoa? What do I mean? It goes back to what I mentioned earlier. If McDaniel and Tua flop this year, could they reset? You know, this is a pivotal moment for McDaniel where if the defense regresses and the offense continues to sputter late in the season, McDaniel could be out the door. And if McDaniel's out the door, he's tied to Greer because Greer's not going to get another shot with another head coach. And they're both tied to Tua Tagovailoa. And a new regime would probably want a new quarterback if McDaniel's gone. So does Vic Fangio's departure hold off the Miami Dolphins from extending Tua Tagovailoa based on if this guy who fills in the vacancy doesn't work out, we could be sitting here watching this get blown up next offseason. Doug, what do you think?
That whole situation is so tricky to me because he for a good 80 to 90% of the season has shown that, okay, yeah, you should give this guy an extension, led the league in receiving, top 5 in all the major categories. But then when it came down to it, he just didn't show up. And that's where you kind of have that hesitation with, are we in another Ryan Tannehill situation? Whereas Tua is much better than Ryan Tannehill. but are we in another one of those situations where he's plateaued and he'll never break that ceiling to get us the playoff wins and push us? But I don't think we're there yet. But it's the unknown. So for me, it's like I don't feel like you set the market, because he's going to want to set the market. That's, he's going to want to make more than Herbert. Hey, I played the full season. I got us to the playoffs. I have more passing yards. Same thing with Burrow. He wants to make more than them. And it's like, I right now sitting here can't justify paying him the top quarterback money. And then you offer him anything else, it's kind of like a slap in the face. So, maybe you do play him on his 5th-year option. And like you said, because if the wheels fall off and we regress from 11-6 and we don't make the playoffs, it's 3 years. The cap space is going to be even worse. It is at a time, like you said, to just tear it down and start over again. So I feel like that does play a big part in him getting that contract extension. If there's a way that you can give him a contract extension,
would you be okay if he accepted less guaranteed money than?
That's what I'm saying. Like,
Lamar Jackson just going to win the MVP. I will not pay you more guaranteed money than Lamar. Would you be more open to a conversation with him if he was willing to accept that?
100%. Yeah. If he's willing to bring down his asking price and kind of play ball with the team and prove himself again, I guess you can say, then 100%. But if he's in the mindset of I want number one money, then it's like, all right, you're gonna have to pay on that 5th-year option, and then we'll see from there.
I think we all agree with you up here. You're not resetting the market.
No,
you know what I mean?
No.
I think you're right. That would be a no-brainer if he said that. I think even the biggest Tua fan in the world couldn't argue that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Neal, what are your thoughts on this? Does Vic Fangio's departure and the potential ripple effect of if McDaniel doesn't get it right, does that make you even more hesitant on extending Tua?
No, I actually think the opposite. I think because of this season ending the way it does and the first 2 seasons that Mike McDaniel has been the coach of this team, we've made the playoffs and we have no playoffs to wins to show for it. I think Mike McDaniel, Chris Greer, and Tua Tagovailoa are kind of tied together here. And for me personally, the deal with Tua is going to get done because it expands the amount of cap space the Dolphins are going to have to work with to really go all in here.
About $12 million, right?
Yeah, 12 to 15 million, depending on how it's structured. And I think you also got to ask yourself this question. I always, when people go into spaces or ask me about the Dolphins, and it's like, we should replace Tua. Well, my question always first is with who? And who are we going to get in the draft that's going to replace him? Is it going to be you? Would you really take J.J. McCarthy or, Bo Nix over Tua? Or what free agent quarterback are you going to take? Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill? Like, the options just aren't there.
It would need to be Drake May or Caleb Williams, and there ain't no way we're sniffing either one.
Yeah, there's just no way.
And even still, what you're about to say, there's no guarantee even Caleb Williams and Drake May will lead the league in passing yards and be in the MVP conversation 2 years in a row.
Yeah, and honestly, that's where the frustration, and if you follow me, I've been very frustrated with how the last quarter of the season went to the Dolphins, because heading into that, I thought we had all the answers, and I don't think we do at this point, but you kind of almost have to take the gamble. I think a lot of us can agree that Tua's at least in most people's top 10, probably closer to 10, if we're being honest, but it's hard to go out there and find that quarterback. When did we become such choosers that a top 10 quarterback ain't good enough for us? Well, and I'm going to go off this, Neal. And sorry, I got to say this, bro, because this is just ridiculous that we're even having this conversation based off the fan base. Josh Allen played arguably the best half of football he's ever played in his life. Couldn't beat Mahomes at home. The MVP put up 10 points at home against Mahomes and couldn't beat Mahomes. Dude, between us, they beat us twice. They beat another team that beat us twice, and they beat a team that blew us out. KC just accounted for 5 of our 7 losses in their fucking 3-game playoff run so far. No one's beating Mahomes right now. I don't care who you are. There is not a single entity in this world that has proven. The one guy that did, right? He's out here dating girls in their early 20s, driving through the mean streets of Tampa. That's what Tom Brady's doing right now. That's the only guy. But Reason, what you just said is what scares me to death, because the big boys table in the NFL for me is Pat Mahomes, and he's on the table probably by his own.
It's himself.
But if there's 3 other seats on that table, it's Joe Burrow because he's beat Mahomes. It's Josh Allen because he's come the closest, and then it's probably Lamar Jackson because the Ravens are one of the best organizations in sports. Do we have a quarterback that can get us even to that table? I don't know. I thought we did.
Yeah, but it's not even you have to beat Mahomes, Neal. You got to beat Mahomes, and then you got to go beat the greatest coach since Don Shula.
Yeah.
You got to beat 2. You got to beat one arguably the greatest coach to ever do it, and you got to beat arguably the greatest quarterback to ever play the position. That's a tall task. And guess what? We still got a head coach that's figuring it out.
I thought quarterback purgatory is what we went through after Dan Marino, from the time we had Dan Marino till we got Tua Tagovailoa. Now I think it is when you have a guy that's probably top 10, but you still can't get over the hump because the ones that are up the top of the food chain are just so damn good. Like Mahomes.
Or are we just from one generational? Listen, we went from a 20-year dynasty into now a 6-year dynasty almost.
Yeah.
We've gone from generational, the greatest that ever done it, to now the guy that everyone's going to hail as the greatest ever done it. We've entered an era that hasn't been seen in the NFL before. Domination by these 2 guys has not been seen before. Who dominated like this? Who?
It's amazing the Chiefs' ability to turn it on in the playoffs, because on Christmas I watched Aiden O'Connell beat them, right? Like, it's amazing their ability to turn it on, because we're the opposite.
They peaked at the right moment, Neal.
You know, we're the team that looks like in October no one can beat the Dolphins, but then when it's the big moments, we look like, you know, that's what's so freaking frustrating.
December and January needs to turn into September or October for us, and we need to flip the whole damn schedule. Then we'll be unstoppable.
Right.
Kevin, your thoughts on Fangio, and if McDaniel doesn't get this right, could that be a reason to hold off on extending Tua?
Yeah, well, kind of piggybacking off what Neal said, that's why on the midseason roundtable I said we wouldn't, we'd only win a playoff game if we played at home, and squandered that pretty badly. With Tua, I think this is one of those cases where kind of the unknown guy in the front office has to make his money. That's Brandon Shore. I think one thing, whether it's been Flores or McDaniel, since he's kind of been in that SVP role, he's done a pretty good job of finding outs early on in contracts, regardless of who it is. Good luck doing that with athletes first. Like, just look at what they've done with the Dak Prescott contract and some of the other ones.
2 words for you, Daniel Jones.
Yeah. So this is where he's got to make his money. But, like, I think from a business perspective, they would be right to hold off as long as they can until you kind of have more of a sample size of it. But I think just given how the market is and how you have to structure the salary cap, I think something gets done. Maybe it's a situation like they have to hold off to figure out what else they have to do on the roster once free agency hits, and you kind of take on the Tua contract by itself after the draft or something, kind of what they did last year with Christian Wilkins. I don't know that Fangio's departure necessarily plays into it, because I think even if he's
talking about the hindsight, if McDaniel doesn't get this right and we regress defensively, it could be bye. So why would you extend a guy that's tied to the hip?
I think even if Fangio stayed and you still regress or the offense collapses like it did down the stretch, like, what's the difference if you still have Fangio or not? Like,
Fangio tries to slide in for that job.
Yeah.
That's what the difference is.
Well, yeah, but I mean, in terms of extending Tua, that doesn't matter, variably.
Well, my whole argument is if it's kind of a wait and see on both of them, because if a new regime's going to want their own quarterback, they're not going to want to be tied to Tua.
Right.
And even though that new regime might be Brandon Shore, I got a feeling that Brandon Shore would be the one that replaces Greer if they canned him, because of the whole what we spoke about earlier anyways.
Yeah. I'm just saying, even if Fangio stayed and they collapsed next year, like the offense did, they're moving on anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Richmond, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they're going to end up paying Tua. Most of the time, the way it works is, I agree. I don't think he'll pass up like Lamar Jackson or whatever. But typically in the offseason, if guys play the same position or whatever, they want guys to exceed what they got, because it helps the next time go around. But I don't see the Dolphins doing that. But I do think I think they will pay Tua. I don't think it has anything thing to do with Fangio because first thing to do is he's going to bring up his numbers. I think the thing which Kevin brought up, Neal, basically everybody brought up. I think the thing with Tua, if you got a top 10 quarterback, I think the thing to do is, and I think we talked about it on the show, me, you, and BallGame, is having that change-up guy, that big back, that big bruiser back, that when it comes in the second half of the season, because typically in the first half of the season, by halfway, you've shown just about everything that you possibly can show everybody. Now it's about, okay, I know what you're going to do. Am I going to impose my will on you, or are you going to win? It's just like BallGame was saying, you got to become that bully or whatever, and being able to execute and become a more physical style team, I believe, in the second half. So if we can really truly establish the running game and take some of that pressure off of Tua as far as trying to, throw 300-400 yards. If it happens, fine. But if it doesn't, let's have a little bit of balance. And the thing, when you run the football like that, if you notice the playoff games, it seems like the quarters go a lot quicker because everybody just ground and pounding it out. The score is not as high, but the clock keeps moving. So if I had Tua, that's what I would be looking to surround him with, a more physical style running game, because we know what he can do with the football, throwing it, and I think that just helps the team overall. So that's my viewpoint on it.
BallGame, your thoughts on figuring out the defensive coordinator, if it makes them pause on extending Tua because they might reset the whole damn thing if it doesn't go right. Muted.
To be honest, yep, I got you. To be honest with you, bro, I don't think at this point, the fact that we've went for over 2.5 decades looking for a quarterback, that they don't have a choice in the matter. This kid fell into our laps. I always have to remind myself of the fact that if he hadn't gotten hurt, he'd never be here in the first place. And then he hadn't got hurt, he'd have went first in the draft. So he's a gift, in my opinion, from the quarterback guys. And as such, I'm not going to actually act like the Dolphins have many choices. They don't have a lot of choices in this matter. The only thing is how much you're willing to pay this kid, because for me, his season started 2 years ago. Not the first two, because I felt like they threw him in too soon and he wasn't physically ready. And then in the second year, he was fighting through himself and he wasn't himself. Third and fourth year, saw a different kid, saw a guy that was really out there willing to, take it to the next level and duel and fight and leave it all on the field. Guys rallied around him. People changed their opinion about him. He made people change their opinion about him no matter how much they hate on him. He don't get involved in that. He just go about the business of trying to get better every week in and week out. Some of his shortcomings in the games, I think, are a primary result of Mike and his inability to grow. So for me, I've seen enough right now to know that without a shadow of a doubt, he's still ascending. He's not plateaued out at any point. So I'm going to pay it. I'm going to get out in front of it early before I make a bad decision and then wait too long. And I think that he's level-headed enough to be able to look at truly if he going. He's level-headed enough to understand where he is. You got to beat the guys that are actually the guys perennially every year in the playoffs in order to be able to progress. You can't be making all of the money and still going home in the first round and sitting on your butt. So the contract needs to make sense. Something similar to that. I believe that our guys will do an amazing job of getting that done so that it's a fair deal for both parties and both people are, appropriately compensated. But he's the centerpiece, man. Without him, a lot of what they're hinging their successes on, especially on the offensive side of the ball, is just not going to work. And starting over or not, the guys that are expendable, yes, coaches are definitely more expendable than players, because players are the ones that you make the big dollar investments in. Coaches are supposed to be out there to mentor this talent and help this talent excel. But across the board, we always see it all the time. At the end of the day, coaches get replaced. Players still stay. So whoever don't like it, it is what it is. But at some point, you still got to deal with the fact that the Dolphins went 2.5 decades without a quarterback worth of shit. And now you have one. And he's legitimately the guy that's out there spinning it, where everybody was talking about yards didn't matter. But now when Tua gets the yards, people are talking about, oh, it's more than just that. Well, he already matched that category. So now next year, you work on the wins. And at the end of the day, for me, I'm not a big quarterback guy, but we haven't had one this good in quite some time. So, no, go ahead and pay the kid. Get out of the way of this whole process. Don't even make it an issue. And then that way you can work on the other issues that you have with this cap, because he's going to free up anywhere between 12 to 15 for you to be able to do some other things. And you're going to need that space. So sooner you get it done, one side of the offense, one side of the business don't have anything to do with the other. Whether Mike them pick the right guy or not, the defense still has to do its job, and that person is ultimately going to fall on the Mike. You know what I mean? And for me, I think they're going to give him enough rope, man. I think that they've shown enough in the last 2 seasons, although we didn't like how this ended down the stretch. But, shit, you had 9 key injuries, bro, starters. You know what I'm saying? That a lot of teams – I've yet to still see a team that has that many significant injuries at the key and most crucial points of the season and still be able to get out there and hold Kansas City to 5 field goals and 1 touchdown.
Bro, that's why I think Slowick needs to get I know everyone loves Anthony Campanelli and Ronaldo Hill. Slowick needs to get some props as maybe the guy. What he did, he went from the deepest unit on the team at outside linebacker to trotting 36-year-olds out there and trying to make it work and still getting pressure and stuff. And the job his brother did this year as offensive coordinator in Houston, and their dad was a former coordinator too, I believe. So, Martin, your thoughts on Tua's extension?
I would say let Tua's extension be a package deal with the offensive line, because clearly when Tua's protected, he just operates at a completely different level. But there were so many patchworks going on with, Liam Eichenberg, Rob Jones, and whomever else. It was a struggle for Tua to really stay on key and on code with the rhythm, with the timing, with the precision, because the offensive line was in shambles, and it affected him directly. So when it comes with the extension part of it, athletes first or whomever else is involved, they have to consider, yes, let's pay Tua, let's extend him, let's arrange the contract in a way where he's secure, for the rest of his life. Cool. But at the same time, if he does not perform, it's all for naught when it comes to the Miami Dolphins side of this. So it has to be a package deal with Tua and bringing back specific offensive linemen. And obviously through the draft, let's see what we can do as well. I think it needs to be a package deal. But also we do have to realize that Tua, and this is just objective, Tua has shown that he can play at this level. But he has equally shown that in moments in times where we do need him to show the more intense side of himself, the more there is a lack of intensity that I would.
Consistency. You can't say that, because look at what he did against the Chargers. Didn't have a run game, didn't have a defense. We don't see it consistently enough. We don't see that guy show up consistently enough.
But reason what that was week 1, right? And respectfully,
look against Dallas. We could have scored on that drive. We were running down their throat.
Dallas was a good game as well.
Go look at Atlanta.
It's there. But what I'm saying is, in particular, but in particular, when there's times where we can actually use it, when it's actually needed. I'm of the belief that if we're going to extend him, there has to be incentives to where not seeing it as far as like the expression is concerned, but the actual situations being executed. I would put incentives of
you can incentivize fourth quarter performance. No one's going to do that.
I hear you.
The performance levels are like Pro Bowl, passing leader, touchdown leader. They don't start getting into like, no one's going to a incentivized specific something like, or injuries, playing time.
That's a part of it. That's a part of it.
Incentivize like specific, like, crunch time numbers. You can incentivize playoff wins. That's one thing you can do. But again, what is that? That's the same thing as passing yards leader, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that's what I mean by
Can't
if we could
like a week 11 game against Kansas City in the fourth quarter is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you could incentivize playoff appearances, right? You could incentivize playoff seeding. You could incentivize
not all that shit don't matter. We got 2 back-to-back appearances, and how many wins we got to go with it?
But seeding in particular is something that could be incentivized if you gain the number 1 seed, and you're talking about you have to play certain games a certain way to win those games to gain leverage for tiebreakers and number 1 seed.
Even if we got that number 1 seed, we still would have got beat at home by the Kansas City Chiefs, and ain't no one telling me different out of what I just seen the last 3 weeks.
Well, with the injuries, I think absolutely, bro.
Oh, I think even healthy. They got the magic. They've captured the magic right now, bro. Anyone who watches
they do look special.
They do look special. The right time right now.
Honestly, I think the issue becomes the fact that when people talk about it, they talk about. I'm sorry, Mark, but they talk about Mahomes. But it's not just him. We're watching right now unfold in front of us the new age, the new dawn of the second best coming of Brady and Belichick. More refined,
a dynasty,
more
a dynasty,
right? Same. Think about how they were built, right? Bill had a stout defense. They had a running game. They got Angry Man Pacheco over there, but they had a tight end, and they had a bunch of no-name receivers, right? That nobody else would have picked up, but those guys played their part, and they had Mahomes. The tight end's best friend is the quarterback. Gronk and Brady were in love with each other. And when they needed big plays, those two
BallGame after the Bucs lost in the Super Bowl, they have not compromised on the offensive line. They shipped Tyreek Hill out to make sure they didn't compromise on the offensive line, like the Patriots under Dante Scarnecchia.
Yeah. One thing I'll say is I'm cheering for the Chiefs pretty hard in the Super Bowl because I do think if they win, there's a strong chance that Travis Kelce could retire and potentially Andy Reid, and that could put a hitch in the wagon for sure.
Yeah. Dude, and you know why I think the Lions or the 49ers have a chance? You know, I think they have a chance from 1 to 53. How those are 2 of the most complete rosters in the NFL, let alone the NFC. Like you look at the San Francisco 49ers right now. Here's another thing I pointed out, boys. I saw what you liked, Doug, on Twitter there about the Dolphins EPA per pass. Their ranks from weeks 1 to 13 against man, they were first. Against zone, they were second. And then in weeks 14 to 18 against man, they were 28th against zone. And then if you look at the snaps with both Hill and Waddle on the field from weeks 1 to 13, 59%. Weeks 14 to 18, 16%, right? But you know what I think, boys? I talked about this on the show yesterday. Look at year 1. Tyreek and Jalen were 1A, 1B. Look at Shanahan. Look at the balance he has with Debo and Ayuk. He knows how to use his top 2 guys and blend in Kittle.
That's right.
We don't, but Smith is screaming the last 3 weeks. The seam's working. Feed me. We don't go to it, right? Look, it becomes this 2K thing was the worst thing that could have happened to this season. You guys need to be focused on the Super Bowl, not personal accolades right now, all right? And I talk about this all the time. Me hearing Tyreek tell the reporters in the locker room, oh, me and my family talk about it at the dinner table. That never sat right with me, man. That 2K shit needs to go out the window because we had a legitimate 1A, 1B threat, and he was found balance in the passing attack. And it felt like that totally went out the window to the point where, Martin, me and you were not complaining last year. The amount of times we were complaining every Tuesday this year with how much 2 concept stuff we were seeing ran.
Right.
And I feel like the 2 concept stuff came down to getting Tyreek his yards.
Yeah, I think for me, man, when you think about it, though, there's well, this is why I'm pounding the table and I'm thinking to myself, Mike has to do himself a favor. Everywhere he's been, I have not seen anything, read anything. Nobody's told me differently, but he's been the running game coordinator. I don't take that away from him. I know he knows how to do that. Stutzville is also on the staff as a run game guy. Where is your passing prowess? And that's what gets him in the most trouble. Those concepts, those basic concepts that everybody can sit on, and everybody basically that when they taking away all of his passing stuff, which is not very intricate, right? That's what got Baltimore in trouble too. When you think about it, Lamar didn't have any intricate pass routes. They would block 7, release 2 guys to the flats or to the middle open areas of the field, and they had basic concepts on the back end. When you can cover that type of stuff, and you ain't got to devote a whole bunch of you can cover 6 with 3 because they sent 5 guys at Lamar to keep him in that pocket. You can win any game that way, and that's what Kansas City did against them. And they basically did the same thing to us. Baltimore did the same thing to us. They sat on our routes. They knew what the combinations were because they weren't intricate route combinations. And the routes that should have been targeted, we never targeted them enough throughout the season for them to matter. We didn't even throw the seam routes. So Tua was, unfortunately, by process of this whole season, he never even looked at the seam when we saw Smythe running open and stuff. So maybe Mike can give that stuff over to what's that dude's name? Because one of them leaving, right? Going to so give it to one of the other.
Frank Smith.
Yeah, give it to one of the other guys, man.
Yeah,
Frank Smith staying, right? So give it to one of the other guys. Let them handle that and just focus on being a head coach.
I think that'll help Mike McDaniel too, as far as the head coaching is concerned, because there's so many other things and aspects when it comes to being on the sideline and being the head coach. Being engaged with the referees, being engaged with the tempo of the game. When he's completely submerged into offense. When he's completely submerged into the offense, that takes away. Yeah, it takes away so many intricacies in what it means to be a head coach. So he has to pass that baton, if he's going to advance.
Well, I think the problem is right now he's trying to be a head coach and an offensive coordinator, and he hasn't even come close to mastering either one. And that's
true.
That's an issue right now, right? So, all right, let's wrap this up because I want to go over our predictions because we got to give some clapping to 2 of you.
Unless you're a circus performer, I ain't never seen nobody ride 2 horses.
And then I want to go over your guys' picks because we do have certain picks. First of all, if Kansas City does win, this is potentially going to be next year's Madden cover, so be out on the lookout for that. Right, so I don't know about that. You know what I mean? I don't know.
God.
I don't know. So, all right, let's give some props. All right, let's give some props right here. Martin.
Yes, sir.
Look at you, 11-6. Look at you. But Martin, we got to give Kevin his props, and Kevin gets another layer of props from all of us because Kevin. Not only did he also choose the Miami Dolphins go 11-6, just like Martin did, but also, first of all, here you go, Kevin. Okay. You got it right, Kevin. There you go. Take a bow, sir. Kevin also predicted us. What about the playoffs? You said you wanted to take a victory lap, I believe. There was a little bit of a victory lap you wanted to say. You're muted, by the way. Hope we're not down this path again, huh?
Sorry.
Okay, there we go.
I really don't want to take a victory lap because I wish I was wrong, but like you could see it from the middle of the year. If they had to play on the road, they were screwed.
Yeah. From the midseason roundtable. Franklin it says Frazier and Staley best choice, both likely to leave after season for head coach. I think Evero would be the same. Weaver and Kiffin more likely to stay and create stability. I think Staley will be here for a couple years. I think he's got to be a coordinator for a couple years before he gets another shot. That was a disaster in Los Angeles, right? And vets give more input with first year DC also, which makes agreed. Players like guys they can trust and that'll listen to them, right? Especially the new generation we're talking about now.
Staley
finally, boys.
Enough,
I think Staley's. Listen, you saw. I know we all saw that clip that Chris Kaufman from 3 Yards Per Carry shared about. What McDaniel said about Brandon Staley at Quarterback Collective, where he said Staley makes you invent things left and right because I think Fangio was the guy they wanted. They all see Staley as the next step down from Fangio. That's That's why he was with interviewing with LaFleur, then us, and now potentially back with McVay this week. So, all right, let's start with you, Dougley. I gave them a list, everyone. I said, who's your offensive MVP? Who's your defensive MVP? Who's your special teams MVP? Which I already named on the channel. It was Tyreek for offense, Chubb for defense, Sanders for special team. But I also asked you guys on top of that, which player was your biggest disappointment and which player was the most pleasant surprise. My biggest disappointment was Kader Kohu, and I get that might be because of Fangio and what he's asked to do, but he regressed. And my biggest surprise was obviously Eichenberg by the end of it. But your list, Dougley.
Offensive MVP, I gotta go Tyreek Hill. That man was the offense. He did everything. He was playing hurt. There's times he probably should have just sat out like he did against the Jets, but he still went out there. He was a beast. Defensive MVP, I'm going Jalen Ramsey. We saw the difference when that man was on the field and how he just they wouldn't throw to him. They just would not throw to him. Did fantastic there. Special teams MVP, nobody. I can't. I
like that, man. I wish
can't. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. From the punting to the coverage, it was to the head coach, how is he still employed? How is
Well, let me ask you, Doug, do you think it's because they don't want two simultaneous searches going on right now?
It's a possibility. Hopefully they make that move.
They should have fired him.
I'd rip the Band-Aid either way. I'm just
he's got to go. Cressman's got to go. Biggest disappointment. I want to say X, but I wasn't really disappointed. He's been on the downward spiral. Biggest disappointment. I probably have to go Cater as well because I'm looking at everyone else and I think Baker played well when he was out there. Mm-hmm. Maybe even throw Javon Holland out there. He kind of regressed a little bit. So just to be different, I'll say Javon Holland. I think he could have done better, but he also had a double MCL sprain. I never want to play at Citi Field ever again. What is up with that field? And which player was the most pleasantly surprising for you? Austin Jackson. He earned that contract extension. He held down that right side. There was a few times here and there, but no tackle is going to be perfect. Pleasantly surprised, and I'm happy to eat crow on that one. I thought he was going to be gone after this year, and I'll eat crow on that. I'll eat crow.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're all eating crow on Liam Eichenberg, no matter who we are right now.
That's true.
Neal Driscoll, who have you given all your awards to?
Offensive MVP is going to be Tyreek for sure. Tyreek, he's had back-to-back his best 2 seasons as a pro. He's the best player on this team, probably the best player we maybe have had since 13. So my defensive MVP, Zach Seilert, man, 10 sacks, interception, a touchdown, a forced fumble, 2 fumble recoveries, 11 tackles for a loss. Ultimate lunch pail player. When you talk about this team having dogs and not having dogs, I think anybody in the league would say that guy's a dog. What a beautiful contract that looks like now. My special teams MVP, I could go nobody and agree with Dougley, but I'll change it up a little bit. I'll give it to Jason Sanders because I do think his leg got us into Dallas, beat Dallas and got us in the playoffs. I'd still look for a kicker though. My pleasant surprise would be Austin Jackson. Agreed, he solidified himself as a young, up-and-coming right tackle. And my biggest disappointment, even though I have him as the offensive MVP, was Tyreek Hill. And the reason is in the biggest games, he didn't make the biggest plays. And, I see this guy as a top 3 football player in the game. The drops in crucial situations are killer. And I'll tell you right now, I'm starting my offseason a little disappointed with him because I don't need him to become a distraction. This team should be focused. They should be pissed off that they underachieved this year. I don't want to hear about his divorce. I don't want to hear about ashy lips. I don't want to hear that his PlayStation Network's down. I want to see this team I want to see this team give a shit that they didn't achieve their goals, man. Yes. And if it's about his 2000, well, we didn't achieve that either. And I will give him credit for fighting through it that most people won't. I love Tyreek Hill. I don't want to get it twisted. But in those big games, and we've highlighted some of those drops, man, ultimately, I think those were the difference in us hosting a TJ Wattless Pittsburgh Steelers team in the wild card instead of going to a minus 30-degree wind chilled game in Kansas City. Now, the good thing about Tyreek Hill is I think he's a guy that will answer a challenge to be back, but I just got to be fair and holding players to the standard I set.
Kevin.
Offensive MVP, Raheem Mostert. Thought the run game really struggled when he was out, other than Achane in the Baltimore game. Defensive MVP, probably go with Christian Wilkins, but I can see the case for Zach Seiler and Jalen Ramsey as well. Special teams, Jason Sanders. I actually looked this up. He only missed 4 field goals all year. 2 of those were blocked. So the only 2 he really missed were both from beyond 50 when he was 5 of 7. So I think he redeemed himself pretty well. Was it biggest disappointment? I'd go one on offense would be Braxton Berrios. It's like trying to play with 10 guys when he's getting pressed. Defense was Kader Kohu. I mean, he's probably still seeing CeeDee Lamb in his nightmares. Biggest surprise on offense, I would go Rob Jones. When he was in there, I thought he played really well. Defense, I'll go with Deshaun Elliott.
Someone asked me in the chat, what are my thoughts? Yeah, it is. What's your thoughts on Frankie Lavu? I wanted to make a move for him last offseason. Richmond, I believe at the trade deadline. He was one of the players I was saying we should make a move for at the trade deadline. It was Frankie Lavu. Richmond Webb, your award, your personal award.
Yeah, I kind of agree with everybody. I got Tyreek as offensive MVP. For defensive MVP, I had Cole. That was Christian Wilkins and Zach Seiler. Special teams, I had Jason Sanders. My pleasant surprise was Devon Achane. I was pulling for him, Achane, to do well. So thought it for a rookie coming in. And also I got an honorable mention for Austin Jackson. I thought he should have been a Pro Bowl player. He had a hell of a year this year. So got to give him a shout out. And then for my disappointment, and I don't know what the reason is, whatever, but I put down Chase Claypool. I thought when we traded for him, he could be that big target that, it was just a great mismatch, but it just never seemed like it worked out, or we didn't get much production out of it.
Yeah, that's a good one. Ball game.
I'm gonna go offensive because they have to shoulder the whole burden. I'm gonna go with Tua. Shit, he gave us over 4,000 yards. You know what I'm saying? And Tyreek don't get them balls until they ain't putting them where they was. You know what I'm saying? So, defense, I got to go with Ramsey because nobody threw at him. You know what I'm saying? The effect is real. What he brings to your defense is real. Basically, the entire half of your field is shut off from you because you don't want to throw over there at him. Jason Sanders, I think, did an awesome job considering the fact that, you know what I'm saying, he knew his back was against the wall, you know what I'm saying, and he held it down. My biggest disappointment, I got 2. McDaniel's inability to get out of his own way in the entire tight end room. They were non-existent when we needed them the most. Right. The biggest surprises for me, I would say most pleasantly surprised was Van Ginkel's emergence, although I've been a huge fan of his from day one, and Austin Jackson, who I told people needed to just go into his man body. All he needed to do, and he showed up. So that was that. And I'm still gonna give a shout out to my dog, no matter what. I know a lot of people don't like him, but Jerome Baker, because he gave us everything he had, and he continues to every year. So those are the ones I'm gonna ride with.
Martin, who are your picks?
Yeah, offensive MVP, I'm gonna go with Austin Jackson. He played the most. He played the most on the offensive line. He showed up big time from week 1 all the way up until he got his extension. I love the way he was playing. He looked like an all-pro early on in the year. He looked like I thought he was one of the Pro Bowl snubs on the team, in my opinion. He was my offensive MVP as far as what he contributed to our success when he was playing well. My defensive MVP was ADG. Vic Fangio that was one of his pieces that he just couldn't resist. He couldn't resist putting on the field, man. Whether it be edge rusher, stand up linebacker, anywhere we can put AVG. I thought he made so many impact plays when he was out there, even subtle impact plays that, you know, the stat sheet would just say it's a tackle, but as far as situational football, it was so significant. AVG always showed up every time I needed a play to be made defensively. And my biggest surprise, ironically, is Tua, man. My biggest surprise was Tua. I was convinced he had the Teron Armstead syndrome where he was bound to miss like 3 or 4 games. And lo and behold, man, every single game, Tua started it and finished it. And I was so happy to see him finish this year, you know, upright, no injuries, no obviously nicks and bruises, but that's what the season holds for any NFL player. So Tua was my biggest surprise as far as maintaining his health all year. My biggest disappointment, it's tough to say. It's tough to say, man, but you know what? I'm gonna biggest disappointment. I don't know. I'm not necessarily disappointed in any player in particular. I'm just disappointed in our results on the season, man. I'm disappointed that we could not.
MVP too. You didn't name that.
Special teams. Give me Jake Ferguson. Jake Ferguson's my special teams MVP.
Okay, now I know you're just trying to be different, bro. Stop. Now I know Jake Ferguson.
I'm playing.
Blake Ferguson. First of all, Blake Ferguson was playing in Dallas. All right.
Damn, my bad, bro.
Yeah.
But all right. So Blake Ferguson, I'm just playing with him. But Jason Sanders was the special teams MVP. He was clutch for us against the Cowboys.
You might as well
and I
Jake
will
Bailey at this rate. And how did no one have and you're looking for someone? Jake Bailey didn't disappoint you? No player disappointed?
Well, no.
Jake Bailey after I just had dinner.
Not but not as much as, you know what, my biggest disappointment this year, man, Jalen Waddle, man. And obviously the injuries played.
Bro, did Jake Bailey account for over 100 yards kicking this year?
That's not his fault. That was different. That 2000, bro. That ain't Waddle's fault,
bro. I get it, but the disappointment is that, like, I was fighting off so many people during the offseason that I didn't necessarily believe that Jalen Waddle was a top 10 wide receiver, and it wasn't necessarily based off stats. It was what I've seen on film, what I've seen during games, and he had top 10 potential, but I just didn't see him reach it just yet. And obviously with Tyreek Hill getting the abundance of the targets, we still haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
But my disappointment is that there wasn't more of a more of a I'm here too. You know, I can be wide receiver 1, 2.
To too much 2 chains, bro. I'm different. Yeah, I'm different. Bro, Jalen Waddle over Jake Bailey, bro. You're lucky I didn't mute you for that one, bro.
Jake Bailey shouldn't even been on this roster, man. We should have brought back Morstead.
In fairness, now I will say, obviously, I agree. Like, in terms of he didn't live up to what he did look like in year 1. But in fairness, the guy's been injured since the offseason. And it never got better.
Right.
It never looked like. And then when it did look like he started to get healthy and he started to make plays, he got hurt again.
And again, the disappointment was not necessarily the performance. It was more so, damn. I wish we had him as wide receiver 2.
Yeah.
Period. You know what I mean? It would have spread the wealth a lot more. So that was the disappointing part of that.
And I'm glad none of y'all named Eli Apple as the most biggest disappointment too. So
you know what you was getting.
I mean that's a foregone conclusion. You know what I mean?
Hey, nothing from you. No player disappointed you this year. You're on record already. All right, I got you.
I mean, I was trying to think about it because I didn't want to necessarily put Waddle in that because I was like, is Waddle a disappointment? But yeah, man, I think it was Waddle, man. Like, I'm disappointed that he didn't get the opportunity to take that next step.
I mean, in all fairness, anyone up here would have named Tua as a disappointment for his play in big moments. You wouldn't have heard any pushback from me. I mean, like, you can go anywhere.
Sure.
With that.
It's all, for sure.
It's objective opinion, right? So, gentlemen, I want to thank y'all. Go ahead, BallGame. Go ahead.
Your quarterback is strapped sometimes and affected by your head coach / OC. So,
yeah.
Come here.
Everybody
all right,
on
boys.
offense is struggling when you. Yeah, my bad.
And girls, bro, you got to finish the thought, bro. You're out here pausing like it's over, and I'm ready to jump in and end it. You know what I mean? All right, I'm gonna be back tomorrow, guys. I'm sure there'll be more. We'll have more. I'll have a news and update show and everything like that. And then I think me and Neal will be back on Thursday. Then I'll be here on Friday. So we got a lot coming your way over the next little bit. And Saturday night, I know EM's all worked up for a Dolphins After Dark episode over this Fangio player stuff. So be on the lookout for that one. It's about to get heavy. So smash the like button. Subscribe to DouglieDoWrong. Follow Neal on Twitter. Follow Dougley on Twitter too. Follow Kevin on Twitter. Watch his stuff on Dolphins Talk. You know Richmond. You'll see him here. Follow BallGame. Follow everyone. All right. Fins up. I'm out.
Fins up.
Hey.